Hello, hello, hello. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm late, and I think this is the first time this whole training that I've been late. And I'll tell you why. Because my husband is away networking, i.e., playing pickleball. And so the dogs are under my control, and they started barking like right as I was trying to go live. So I had to go calm them down so they would not interrupt. That said, because I'm on my own, if you hear them barking, I'm going to do my best to ignore them and pretend like I don't hear them. And I would love if you can do the same. But if you cannot hear me over the dogs, let me know in the comments. I just hope that doesn't happen. So good morning. Guys, this is the last training of the session. 9 trainings we've done in 3 weeks, all surrounding around scaling your 7-figure business. And today, let me talk about me first. I am Bree Beers, if you do not know me. I've been an accountant for 20-ish years. Bree Beers and Associates is my first firm. It's in its 7th year, and it is a tax preparation and planning firm specializing in small business returns and more complex individual tax returns. So business owners, people who own maybe rental real estate, maybe lots of investments, that kind of thing. I'm also the founder of Peak Prosperity CFO. We empower owners of 7-figure businesses to boost their annual compensation by $100,000 by providing profit-centered thought leadership. In everyday terms, what we do is we work with 7-figure business owners who are feeling stuck and wanting more work-life balance and more money in their personal bank account from their business. Finding that, you think that when you hit that 7-level mark, that magically, the money magically rolls in and the work-life balance magically happens, and it doesn't. So we help our clients get there. If that interests you, all the videos we've been doing over the last 3 weeks, go check them out because that's really what a lot of them center around. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to survive this current economic event and the next and the next and the next. And let me start this slide, shall we? There we go. And where we want to start, you guys, is that economic recessions are normal. All right, they are a normal part of our economy, of running a business. And, pandemic was severe, like it was very drastic. But, and I know that a lot of people are like, well, I started my business after pandemic, so I'm safe. Or I made it through pandemic, so I should never have to worry about something similar. What we're learning right now, we're kind of still, depending on what industry you're in, what niche you're in, what size business you're running, you may be in the middle of what feels like a recession right now. There are a lot of businesses struggling in this climate. And so it's funny because I talked to my financial friends and I feel like it's been the same story for the last 5 years. Like, this is unprecedented. We don't really know what, this is unusual. So we're kind of in this expect the unexpected place. But what you can expect, you guys, is you can count on some sort of recession every 7 to 12 years. And I've outlined the most recent here. So in 2020, we had COVID. Back in 2007 through 2009, we had the Great Recession. If you guys, I was not in business at that time, but if any of you were, that was a tough time. I do remember I did own a house, and I do remember panicking at how much my house was not worth. And now, hello. 2001, we had the dot-com crash. 1990, we had the Gulf War recession. 9 years before that, in 1981, we had the double dip recession. And before that, the oil embargo. And you could go back and back and back and back. But hopefully by then, we're to the point where anyone that's on here, that's the earliest we remember, or maybe it's earlier than we remember. So what I want to talk about today is are you ready? Are you ready for your business to sustain whatever's around the corner? And so are you ready? And the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, do you have an emergency cash stash? And every business should have something, right? You should have something set aside for when business slows, if, most unlikely happens, right? And everything's forced to shut down. But do you have cash to sustain you? Because that's the key, right? And so I've always been taught 3 to 9 months of emergency cash fund. That said, 3 months can be a lot for some businesses, and depending on what industry you're in, 9 months might be a requirement. Just depending on, there's a lot of different variables. So, but 3 to 9 months is typically what people are, or what businesses are told to stash away. And this is not just if your business completely shuts down, because again, that is very rare. Pandemic was one of the first times that actually happened, right? But if it slows down, right? If something causes your business's revenue, your income to slow down, do you have cash to, fill in the gaps to get you through that tough time? All right. So that's one. Do you have an emergency cash stash? If the answer is yes, fantastic. You're awesome. Make sure you have enough. Figure out what that magic number is for you, what feels safe, depending on your size business, your industry, all the factors. If you do not, start building one. And what you do is you start building that into your goals, right? If you're not just trying to make enough money to pay the bills and maybe pay yourself, you're also trying to make an extra certain percentage, whatever you decide on, to stash away for a rainy day. Call it emergency cash stash, call it a rainy day fund, your choice. So the next, does your business have a cash flow forecast? This is another important aspect, because in order to know if you have enough money to get you through 3, 6, 9 months, you got to know how much you got to spend, right? In order to know how much that emergency fund needs to be, depending on how many months you've decided you feel comfortable saving, you got to know how much money is going out. So cash flow forecast, what is it? Do I have a slide for this? I don't think so. No. So what is a cash flow forecast? A cash flow forecast is a typically 12-month projection of all the money coming in and all the money going out. How is this different than a budget or a P&L or a budget of a P&L? There are things on your P&L and things that are not on your P&L that affect your cash. So, for example, if you have depreciation, that's not a cash item, right? That's not going to affect your cash. So when you're thinking about cash flow, you don't care about that. Things you do care about that aren't on your P&L. The biggest one, debt payments, debt repayments. So remember that when you have debt, whether it's a mortgage, a loan on a car, a loan on a piece of equipment, whatever that loan is, when you received that money, it was not income to your business. You did not pay tax on it. And when you're paying it off, it is not an expense to your business. You do not get to deduct it. It's a balance sheet item. All right. And the only thing you see on the P&L is interest. Other things, inventory, right? As you're buying inventory, cash is going out, but that doesn't affect your P&L until you sell it. All right. So a cash flow forecast is also important. A budget is a forecast of your P&L. A cash flow forecast is a forecast of your cash flow. It's important to have this cash flow forecast. So again, you can see what money is coming in, what money is going out. This is really helpful and really important. Forget about disaster proofing. If you're a seasonal business, right? Hello, tax preparer. A tax business makes 70 to 80% of all of its revenue in that first quarter, right? They also have a lot of the expenses related to producing, providing the tax service in that first quarter, but there are fixed costs that they have to pay throughout the rest of the year. So you got to make sure you're making enough cash in those busy seasons to pay those fixed costs in the not busy seasons. All right. So that a cash flow forecast is important, even if you're, prepared for a disaster, you're not preparing for disaster, you feel good about the next recession, whatever it is. Cash flow forecasting is so important for a business to function and be successful. It helps you predict upcoming changes and trends by looking at cash flow, by looking at your cash flow for the last few years. You can kind of see how it goes up and down. You can predict how you can also use that to predict how it's going to be in the upcoming year. And the reason you guys this is important, like I said, if you're seasonal, obviously this is important, but if you can predict a dip in revenue, you can determine if you have enough cash to cover it or if you need to make adjustments. All right. So those are the two things, you guys. Are you ready? Do you have an emergency cash flash? Do you have an emergency cash stash? And does your business have a cash flow forecast? All right. So next, let me make sure you want to develop an emergency plan. So what does this look like? So first, I'm not telling you, like, you're not cutting the expenses right now, but what you're doing is you're evaluating all of your money out from that cash flow forecast to decide what could be cut if we do hit an emergency, if we do figure out, like, hey, we got to kind of reel it in. We're not in a season of abundance. We are in a season of slow. So the first thing you want to do is figure out where you can decrease the money going out the door. All right. Can you decrease inventory orders? This is a big one, right? When you are entering a slow season or you see a slow season on the horizon, whether that's because you're seasonal or because we're predicting an economic event, you want cash, you don't want excess inventory. I'm going to say that again. You want cash, you do not want excess inventory. You don't want your cash left up in inventory, because if sales decrease and you're stuck with a whole bunch of inventory but no cash, like, you can't pay your bills with inventory, right? So that's the first thing. If we need to adjust, if we need to, as you're developing this emergency plan, can you decrease inventory orders? The answer is probably yes, but it's important to just see, like, can we decrease those and where? Can you cut expenses? Which ones? What expenses, if revenue decreases, can you decrease? Can you cut as well? Keep in mind, we have our cost of goods, right? Which is essentially the inventory we buy that then we sell. All right. Cost of goods is all of the costs related to producing our good or service. All right. So I like to use t-shirt companies, right? If I'm making and designing t-shirts, the cost of goods includes the t-shirt, the printing, labor to print, that's cost of goods. Because if there are no shirts, there's none of those costs. So that's one thing that can cut, right? If you predict that your t-shirt sales are going to go down, you can cut your labor, you can cut the shirts you're ordering. That goes back to inventory. But what other expenses can you cut, right? Look at the other ones, not just related directly to that, your product or service that you're delivering. Can you renegotiate expenses? This is tends to be a yes, more likely to happen in utilities, like internet, phone, things like that. Can you call your company and say, hey, is there a better plan we can be on, right? Sometimes you can negotiate rent, but that one's a tough one. We learned during COVID, that's a tough one to renegotiate. But that is a question you need to ask as you're developing this emergency plan: are there expenses we can renegotiate? And finally, are there debt payments you can put on hold? And this really comes down to calling your debtors and saying, hey, we're kind of in a tough time. Can we have a forbearance, right? Can we have a 3-month forbearance? Or can we, hold off for 3 months paying on our debts? Some are going to let you, some are not. Some are going to let you, but they're going to penalize you. It depends. All right. But is holding your debt payments an option? All right. So in addition to decreasing the amount of money going out the door, you want to also look at how can you increase the money coming in the door, right? And what we mean is, we learned this a lot in pandemic. Can you bring in new revenue by pivoting? Is there something you can change that maybe isn't being affected by the economic recession or by seasonality as your main source of income, right? So great example from pandemic are restaurants, right? Many sit-down restaurants moved to takeout and delivery in order to keep money coming in the door. Right now, what we are seeing is a recession and a lot of common level things. I'm going to give housing as a great example, not buying houses, right? But like construction. So I'm going to give construction as an example. My, average, my normal housing construction clients, a lot of them are struggling. That is kind of an area where new construction is slowing down and halting in some areas. Whereas luxury construction is thriving right now, right? It is thriving. All of my luxury construction clients are booming, all right? And my luxury contractors. All right. So Can you pivot, right? If your sector is struggling, is there somewhere you can pivot to get money in the door? And the second piece of, can you increase the amount of money coming in the door? Can you find alternative funding? So what this is are there grants available? Can you delay or renegotiate fixed costs? Like we talked about, rent is what I think I said rent was a debt. That's not a debt, that's an expense. Funding with low interest debt. If you're able to get a low interest, that's a funny word right now, right? Low interest, can you get a low interest loan of some sort to get you, like, as an emergency fund? Might be something worth considering. I always tell you, taking out debt to pay your operating expense, last resort. That's not something we want to do. All right. But if, let's say, you're able to make operating expenses, right? Like we think there's going to be enough income to pay our operating expenses, but we have, these, all of our debt for our machinery or our mortgages, that's all going to still be due. And I don't think we were going to make enough cash for that. Maybe there's some sort of consolidation available, or maybe there's some sort of HELOC or line of credit with a decent interest rate that you can take to pay that. But that's something you definitely want to ask someone about. That's not something I highly advise. It's there. All right. So, I did link, there should be a link to a workbook that I created. I think it's called Disaster Proofing Your Biz. And it walks you through these steps. And it's 5 steps. It walks you through, like, in detail, all of these things that we kind of talked about today and more. And revisiting this regularly, highly recommend. Annually, at the very least, ideally every quarter. Ideally every quarter, you're looking at your emergency fund, you're looking at your cash flow, and you're looking at your disaster plan and seeing, you can call it something other than a disaster plan. That sounds so, like, catastrophic. Your emergency plan. I think that's what I called it. You can look at your emergency plan and adjust it as needed. All right. So, disclaimer, I built this, like, I made the worksheet, which I did that a while ago, but I also did the email part. So if it doesn't work, will you let me know? I don't usually do that part on my own, but I gave it the old heave ho and tried this time. So if it doesn't work, let me know. But yeah, download that workbook and utilize that as a resource every quarter, or at least every year, but I recommend every quarter. You do it the first time, it's going to take a while, but every time you do it thereafter, it's going to get a little easier. All right. And you guys, cash flow forecasting is one of the things we do at Peak Prosperity CFO. It's part of the package we provide. So we do cash flow, like what we provide with our fractional CFO services, our cash flow forecasting, profit planning, and budgeting and projecting. What we do at Peak Prosperity, which is, I'm finding, is unique. I'm not saying no other fractional CFO does it. There are fractional CFOs like me out there doing it. I'm learning, I'm working with them, I'm learning from them, but it is not typical. It's not normal. And what we do is we start with the business owner in mind, right? We start with your goals, your financial goals, your work-life goals. We talk about those, and then we figure out how the business supports those. We figure out how much profit the business needs to make to pay you what you need to make. We will help you figure out what levers need to be pulled in order to minimize the amount of time you're working in the business. Like, we work as your CFO to help you with those decisions. I think fractional CFO is becoming a lot more pertinent with small to medium business owners, because typically when people talk about CFOs, they're talking about bigger companies who are paying a CFO, a salary of 6 figures, right? And what we're finding, or what we're learning, is a lot of this is with the help of, software, automation, AI, but we're able to provide these services on a smaller scale to smaller businesses who don't need an in-house CFO, but can benefit from having a CFO on their team to help them with the cash flow forecasting and budgeting and profit planning. All right. It is, whether you work with me or not, I highly recommend that you look into what a fractional CFO can do for you, especially if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling overworked, if you're feeling like you're not paying yourself what you are putting into the business. Check it out. So, key takeaways from today. I'm going to jump around because it's Friday. We jump around on Fridays. So let me do my key takeaways from today. So key takeaways, another economic recession will happen. It will. Every 7 to 12 years, something happens, maybe even sooner. Okay. So avoidance is not an option, right? Hope is not a strategy. You can't just hope like you will avoid the next economic recession. You won't. You got to prepare. So the first thing I want you to do is build an emergency cash stash. That means figuring out how much that is, how much you're comfortable, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and start building that emergency cash stash. I want you to implement and regularly review a cash flow forecast. Remember, our cash flow forecast is looking at how much cash is coming in and out over the next 12-month period. And then I want you to develop an emergency plan. If we need to, how can we cut our cash out and how can we boost our cash in? All right. And then down there it says, are you a 7-figure business owner struggling to find work-life balance and pay yourself enough from your biz? If so, check out our website. Check out our Fractional CFO work. If you're not a 7-figure business owner, then I still want you to look into fractional CFO work for your business, because just because we're not the answer for you doesn't mean that fractional CFO work is not for you. We are niching because I believe that in any business, you are able to scale better when you niche. And if you want more information about that, go check out, I can't remember which training, but there's a training on that from this last 3 weeks. And then I do want to just go over real quick, you guys. I do have bonuses for you, so hang on, don't go anywhere. I have a few little surprises for you. But I did want to just go over the training series that we just completed. All right. If you go wherever you're watching this, if you're in the Money, Tax, and Finance Facebook group, all the videos are there. If you're on my LinkedIn page, all the videos are on my personal LinkedIn page. If you are on YouTube, they're all in a series called Scaling Your 7-Figure Business or Scaling to a 7-Figure Business. Scaling your business, wherever that is, there's a whole series. But the things we went over. We said get more guidance from your accountant by asking these 5 questions. They're all good, but I'm biased, right? Stop working for your business and create a business that works for you. 4 things you need to know to take your business to the next level. The secret to taking home an extra 6 figures from your 7-figure business. The 5 common myths about running a successful 7-figure commerce business. Really any business. Simple ways to thrive as a single business owner. So many of a 7-figure commerce business. Again, so many of us are the owner and we feel like everything sits on us and everything's our responsibility. Go watch that video if you want to know how to get out of that feeling. And then I shared 2 stories about 2 of my clients and how they worked to improve their businesses. And then today we talked about surviving this economic event. Even if you're not a 7-figure business owner yet, if your plan is to be high mark, even if your goal is to be a 7-figure business owner, check these trainings out, because the guidance I give you guys is not just about being at 7 figures. They're tips that will help you from most of them from day one. If they're not, I'll tell you. But there were very few times where I'm like, hey, this only applies if you're already at 7 figures. No. In fact, a lot of these, if you start them early, you're going to have an easier road and you're going to scale faster. All right. So definitely check those out. So what do I have for you guys? In addition to the freebie that's in the link up or down, depending on where you're at, I am hosting a Q&A on Monday. This training series is over, but I want you on Monday to bring your questions. If anything related to anything we talked about in the series, even if it was just a split second that I talked about it. But revenue versus profit, cash flow forecasting, scaling, working in your zone of genius, SOPs, standard operating procedures, finding work-life balance, paying yourself more, salaries versus draws, anything that you have questions on, bring them. I already have some in the DMs that I will prep to answer, but if you can catch that live and bring your questions, let me know. You can also, like I said, if you're not gonna be able to join live, DM me, leave them in the comments, either here or when I post to announce the Q&A. So let me know that you have a question and I will make sure to answer it. The other surprise is that I'm going to be continuing weekly trainings. I think I'll know for sure this weekend, but I think I'm going to leave them on Thursdays. Feels good to me. Same time, 10:30 my time. So 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. And I really will direct the content toward what you guys are all responding to from what I've already put out there and what I continue to put out there. So the more responsive you are, the more likely that my content will speak to you. So make sure to provide me with feedback on what you guys need to hear about as business owners. Keeping in mind, I'm always happy to answer tax questions. Oh, like that is my foundation, where my roots. But actually my roots are in financial accounting. I was in financial accounting long before I was in tax. And so this fractional CFO work that Peak Prosperity is doing is kind of taking me full circle. But that said, you don't have to be a 7-figure business owner to ask questions that are related to, how do you scale your business? How do you find the work-life balance? How do I pay myself more? All those things. That's what I do. So I think that's it, you guys. It's been really, really awesome being with you for these last 3 weeks. I'm excited to see you guys every week, and we'll see you guys on Monday at the Q&A. Send those questions in, because I'm not going to lie, I can answer them live, but it gives me less anxiety if you send them in first, so I can, prep and give you the best answer possible. So, all right, guys, have a fantastic weekend. Happy fall. Hope your weather is as awesome as ours is here. It's going to be like 60 today. High. That's great for me. Love it. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Bye.